The High Court sitting in Johannesburg is set to hear the matter between the survivors of the Marikana massacre and President Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as Sibanye Stillwater, that's a company previously known as Lonmin. Proceedings will begin on Friday. In fact, over 300 arrested mine workers have filed papers against the president, Lonmin, and the government. The workers are requesting them to be held liable for the events that unfolded in Marikana back in 2012 and the actions of the South African police. For his part, Ramaphosa says the acting director of public prosecutions in the Northwest has been instructed to finalize investigations into the massacre and enable the NPA to decide on possible prosecutions based on evidence, is what he also had to say. So let's get you a sense of how this is all likely to unfold. Bring in Advocate Romeo Nthambeleni. He joins us now via our video link for his insights. And Advocate, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for making time for us here on Newzroom Afrika. It was also on Friday when President Cyril Ramaphosa told MPs that 174 million rand has now been paid to the victims of the massacre. Help us place that announcement in the context of this case.
Yeah, look, it's an important question that you're asking. We put it in the context of this
Advocate,
case.
I think you might have muted yourself. Yeah. I wonder if you can just double check your settings.
Okay. No, I'm not muted. Yes, can you hear me?
There you are, loud and clear. Apologies. Yeah. There might have been a technical gremlin there on our side. Please continue.
Yeah, what you're saying is important about the settlement, because in South African law, we have got a principle that is called the once and for all rule. If you are paid once for the same course of action, you cannot be paid twice. So I think that's very important. And I think these are some of the exceptions that are raised, because already I'm aware that there were 8 exceptions that were raised against this case that is going to court next week. So if there is some form of settlement that has been made, you cannot be compensated twice for the same course of action. That is the South African law.
It also comes in a context where the High Court in Mabato had actually acquitted the Deputy Police Commissioner in the Northwest. So I guess that begs the question, on what grounds is this matter being brought forward, especially in a context where we are hoping people will be held personally liable?
Yeah. Look, in terms of personal liability, when we are speaking of a person of a president, we are talking about the email that was written and which may be used as a documentary evidence in court to indicate that he is the one who prompted the actions of the police. So that one, it's a very difficult case to prove, because in criminal law in South Africa, you have to have causation of the link of the cause and the result. So to link it through the documentary evidence of the email, you will need far much more stronger evidence to actually connect the causation and the result as to why do you say that the president was actually involved. So I will see how it actually pans out. But on that damages aspect, is what you and me are saying, to say that once there's payment that has been made, or there's a promise of payment that is supposed to be paid, then parties will reach settlement and the matter will be removed from the roll on the basis that settlement will be made. And that settlement agreement can be made an order of court, so that if the other party does not continue and perform in terms of the terms of the settlement agreement, the other party can go and enforce it. But in terms of personal liability, that is the issue of causation. And you are dealing with the very same issues of dolus eventualis, and they are not easy to prove in the South African criminal law.
Yeah, and a lot has changed since 2012, hasn't it, Advocate? I mean, for one, today we speak about Sibanye Stillwater. Back then, it was Lonmin. Stuff like that, those kind of huge changes, how could they complicate things?
Yeah, look, the change of personnel is not an issue at all, because you can still hold the previous directors of the previous company liable. So the change of the name doesn't really affect and have an impact on the case itself, because the action was instituted at the time when Lonmin was still Lonmin. So they're still going to be held liable under the provisions of the law and the Companies Act in terms of the previous registration. So in terms of the name change, it's not a problem at all. They can still be held liable. But the main question is whether the case is able to be provable in court, what we are discussing.
Yeah, and for that you are saying where the rubber hits the road is a matter of trying to distinguish between causation and correlation in some respects. I think you used some legal term. I mean,
yes.
Given how much time has lapsed, how possible do you reckon that is to do?
Yeah. Look, a long time has actually left. In law, it's always good to strike while the iron is still hot, because you will have people that still have fresh memory of evidence in their mind. The more you delay, the more memory fades, like every other memory of a person. But we are dealing with events that were very highly recorded live, and there's so much documentary evidence relating to that. But like we said, the main action is the very issue of causation that we're actually talking about, to say that, are you able to link the cause and the result? And the email that was actually sent, is it sufficient enough as evidence to actually link the president with that? And you have to lead evidence alunde. Evidence alunde, meaning that the evidence outside the document itself to actually prove that there's a link. For me, I think that is a huge mountain to climb. So hence, there were people that were saying that the president is not admitting and saying that he's personally liable and making an apology. He cannot do that, because once you make that admission, it's an admission outside that document, to say that the document that you have written, you wrote it with an intention that an injury must be caused to other parties. The moment you make that admission, you are making an admission outside that email itself, and I don't think it would have been a wise decision.
Right. The email you're referencing, I think, is the one where Cyril Ramaphosa used the term concomitant action must be used. So as far as you're concerned, those words aren't enough to necessarily link him to what actually then happened on the ground.
Definitely, yeah. Let me rephrase it properly, for you. The email that I'm referring to is the email where the president, let's give him the respect that it deserves, has written, previously before he became a president, and he was referring to concomitant action and saying that what is happening on the grounds of Marikana is a criminal element, and is concerned about it, and it cannot be resolved in any way whatsoever. There must be concomitant action that has been taken. And the following day, what has happened is what has resulted to the tragedy of the Marikana that we actually know, you and me, now today. So, legally speaking, we're saying that is a document that you can be able to produce and say it was written by Ayanda on this day, and this was the result of the aftermath of what he has actually written. But can we then prove to say that after the email was written by Ayanda, what had really happened is the result of the action of the email? That is very difficult to prove on the ground, Ayanda, because you will need to bring evidence aliunda, which is evidence outside that document, to be able to link the cause to the result when we talk about the causation. So that's very much important. And now, if you want to try and link it through dolus eventualis, which is unlawful intention of killing of another person, then you have to reside in the principle of criminal law and be able to try and pin him down, which I think the stakes are very high in terms of that, to prove that in court.
Right. Part of the stakeholders is, of course, Sibanye Stillwater. They've launched, I think it's called the Marikana Renewal Project, or it's the Sibanye Renewal Project. Anyway, it's some kind of initiative to introduce some remedial action following what happened in 2012. AMCU has slammed this as a superficial exercise. But the fact that something like that happened, the fact that a project like this was put together, in what ways could that feature in court?
Yeah, look, it works in your favor. It's important what you're saying. In terms of remedial action, there's what has actually resulted, which has resulted in many people lives being impacted and affected by what has happened, because there's a big argument that some people through their injuries are not able to continue to work in future, and some of the main breadwinners have been lost by their family members. So in terms of doing that remedial action, you are trying to do justice to what has actually happened to the victims, and try to give them some form of reparation, in either doing that through the remaining of their family members, and also supporting their kids through their kind of education. It counts in your favor in court. It counts in your favor when you want to settle the matter, if ever there are issues of damages that are actually being raised against you, to say this should be counted in our favor, that we are in a way trying to fix the mess that has been caused. And even though this mess is not a direct cause and a result of our action, because the action is alleged to have been perpetrated by the members of the police, and that's hence the minister was being sued, and the commissioner of the police. So I think that's very important, and it it works in the favor of settlement of the matter.
Plenty of moving parts. Thanks for helping us frame some of those considerations. Legal analyst, Advocate Romeo Nthambeleni, joining us now via our video link. Advocate, we thank you very much for your time. That matter set to be heard in the High Court sitting in Johannesburg on Friday.